All right, this meeting is being recorded, as you can tell. Well, welcome to Psychology of Play, week 2, lecture 2. Just want to do a quick check-in. How you guys feeling? Hopefully you have taken a look at some of our feedback. We have feedback for week 2 on your discussion boards, so you should be able to see that. I want to just take a second to give you guys an opportunity to see if you have any questions before we get too far going into this. You guys have any questions about week 1 grade or stuff like that? You can ask any questions in the chat box as you go. Laura and I are both here, so we can either answer them in the chat box or answer them live in front of everybody if you're brave. I've got a couple of things we're going to do today. One of the things is totally off the beaten path. We're gonna try to address the elephant in the room with the fact that we're all at home, and so I'm gonna spend some time after I go through the positive psychology stuff. I'm gonna talk about dealing with isolation and like feeling lonely, and when culture totally took everything and threw it all out the window and said stay home and try to get through the next couple months. We're going to talk about that. So we'll see how that goes. So I don't see anything in the chat box about questions. Killing all motivation. Yes, Brian. Yep. Okay, so we're going to do positive psychology today. Within positive psychology, there's some bullet points. We're going to talk about not just the history of how we got to this positive psychology stuff, but also we're going to talk about flow, and we're going to talk about wellness or well-being, and we're going to talk about the PERMA model. And, I'm going to go through those things not slowly because I want to spend some time talking about the isolation stuff. And I want to give you guys a chance to share some of your thoughts. I would like to have you, consider once we get to that point, share with the class. One of the cool things about Zoom is we can unmute you and let you talk. You could even share video of yourself, but you totally don't have to. But, because this is a campus class, it's totally legit for us to be able to share openly. And I want to encourage you guys to take that step, even though we're on this interesting new platform with Zoom. So think ahead, like what are the things that you're doing? How are you staying busy? What are the things that you are able to do? What are the things that you're choosing to do? We're going to talk about control a bit, because that's kind of the theme of what gets messed with is our sense of control. So just think about that as we go. Yeah. All right. I updated some photos. Back to a happier time, way back like 2 months ago when my family was at Disney. We had annual passes. Those went out the window for the time being. But way back in the day, I was a photographer at Disney, and so I love to go with my camera and my family and run around taking pictures of stuff at Disney. And over on the right, my kids are home all the time, and we're keeping them busy. And so they're doing homeschooling. Really, it's like homeschooling through school, distance learning. And we're keeping them busy with art and crafts and all kinds of stuff. We have gardening out in the backyard, but we're doing a lot of things to keep our kids busy so that we don't go crazy. So those are my updated photos. All right. I told you guys some of my background, some of my story. I did photography for a long time. I do counseling. I grew up stuttering. I got over my issues of social anxiety through playing the drums. And so I ended up working myself out of my stuttering by playing the drums. And it was an interesting, cool experience over several years where I became more confident socially, and my speech impediments became less and less. And there's a whole bunch of stuff in there that I won't get into, but the moral of the story is anything that you are not good at, you can go on to be awesome at. And so just to make life more funny, my wife is a speech therapist, and my job is now all about the process of overcoming stuff. And you can too. So there you go. All right. I am going to turn off my video. Let's see if I can get the video thing to go away. Okay. Now I can see more of my screen. So we're going to challenge the field of psychology's dominant diseased model theory. We're going to put a face to positive psychology and learn what it's about. We're going to explore happiness, gratitude, and PERMA. Then we're going to talk about the exact opposite, being isolated and alone. So psychology has like two paths that go in different directions. And so way back in the day, psychology really just had one path. And so psychology was all about doing awesome stuff. They wanted to help build people up. They wanted to help people grow, and they wanted to establish, great positive path. And so it was like that for a while. And then as they got up to World War I and World War II, things changed. They realized that there was the opportunity to make a whole lot of money in labeling things as sick. And so psychology went from this like positive way to help build people up and identify strengths and stuff like that. And then it turned into how do we diagnose somebody as sick? And so with that whole idea came the idea of the disease model, or clinical psychology as a disease model. And so whenever people went off to fight in World War I and World War II, they came back with stress, and it was traumatic stress, and they called it shell shock back in those days. And so they started to look at these folks, and they started to see, that they were damaged. And so they decided that they wanted to help people address those damages. And so what they started to do was to look for the symptoms that they were trying to identify. And so when you identify those symptoms, what you do next is you try to treat them. And by identifying and treating symptoms, you end up with this cluster of things that you can label. And so those labels would begin to fall into clinical diagnoses. And that's where we came up with the ideas of disordered mood and disordered personality. And so because of the tendency to try to identify and treat mental illness based on symptoms, they started to lose their focus on the original purpose, which was to build people up and to help people improve from where they are to where they want to go. It became a thing that was about how can we identify broken aspects and label those things. And so psychology became very much a science based on disease. And so things like bipolar disorder and schizophrenia and post-traumatic stress disorder, personality disorders like bipolar disorder, narcissistic personality disorder, these are the things that psychology became known for. And as time went on, they came up with a whole just host of layers. And so on one layer, we have it's called axis 1. And those are the things that you can treat, like bipolar disorder and mood disorders. And then on axis 2 is personality disorders. Those are things like borderline personality disorder. And so as they identify those things, they come up with ways to treat it. And so by coming up with these ways to treat it, then you've got a model for how to how to funnel those diagnoses into ways to get paid for treating those things. And so with insurance coming into play, then insurance starts to put more value on more significant diagnosis. And so when somebody comes to my office and they want to have help for something that they're going through, there is a burden on me, if I were to be an insurance provider, to diagnose somebody as severely as I can, because the more severely I diagnose them, the more likely I am to get paid for a longer period of time to treat them. I said if I took insurance, I decided not to because I don't like that model. And so I am a private pay only therapist, and most of what I do is I try to treat the least restrictive diagnosis. And so I find out what's going on with the client and I find out what they would like to do. Typically, people don't come in and say, I'm sick. What they do is they come in and they say, hey, I got this thing I want to get a little bit of help with. Can you help me get better? And so by looking for the least severe diagnosis, I'm able to help them the quickest and get them on their way. And so by doing that, I have a whole lot more ability to do what we're going to talk about right here with positive psychology. And so because we went through all of this stuff about differentiating between the disease model of psychology, there were good things that came about of it. And so the good things that came about were that there were big strides in how they understand therapy and mental health. And so they were able to identify 14 different disorders, and they became more manageable. And new treatments were identified and developed. But there were some bad things too. Psychology became a field of victimology, and practitioners went about treating mental illness within a disease framework by trying to repair damaged habits, drives, childhoods, damaged brains. And the real kicker is there's not a method for preventing mental illness. So there's that part. How are we doing so far? You guys still with me? I've had a couple of warnings from my internet that it was not super strong.
Hey, I have a question about it. Would you say that mental illness is something that is developed over a significant event, or do you think somebody can be born with it as well?
Yes. So it's both and neither. It kind of depends. There are some things that we are born with that, it does not mean that they're necessarily chronic.
Like autism?
So autism comes about after 2 years old. And so it's hard to say that you're born with it. Not that you are not going to be able to be diagnosed. Like, I don't think they can diagnose it right up front. They've got to go through a couple of years before they can diagnose it.
Okay.
Yeah. But then there's also, some things that are very situational, like post-traumatic stress disorder is all situational. It's based on having been through a traumatic experience and not being able to resolve it. And so there are so many things that are involved in how, any psychological thing, disorder or strength, since there are so many things involved in it, there's a lot of different ways that it originates. It's a good question. There's both answers. It can be things that develop in infancy, like we're going to get into flow here today. And one of my specialties is in dissociation. And so dissociation begins.
Psychosis?
It's not psychosis, no. Dissociation is a different thing. Psychotic features are often confused for dissociation. So we'll get into it.
Okay.
All right.
Is the microphone too loud, by the way? I feel like it's loud.
I don't have control over it at the moment. You can mute it if you want to, you can let us know in the chat box that you want to ask a question, and then you can unmute yourself and you can go that way. I've got most of the microphones muted, but I can't see yours, so I can't mute you, but you can mute yourself. So the idea here is that psychology, or positive psychology, is not just about pathology and stuff like that. Positive psychology is the study of strength and virtue. We're gonna keep positive psychology up as identifying and looking at and developing your strengths. Treatment's not just fixing what's broken, it's also nurturing what is best. Psychology, it's not just a branch of medicine concerned with illness or health, it's much larger. It's about work, education, insight, love, growth, and play. So here are some principles for positive psychology. It's the difference between being proactive instead of reactive, and you can't find happiness by assigning power to things outside of your control. So if you guys think about like self-help books, are you guys familiar with like self-help books? You know, motivational speaking type things. That whole science it's very comparable to positive psychology. The idea that you can identify, you know, something positive about yourself. Everybody has positive traits, and it's identifying those things and developing what those things are. And so when somebody comes in to a positive psychology clinician's office, the positive psychology therapist is going to ask the client, hey, you know, let's look at what are some things that you enjoy. What are you good at? What is your life about? And so, you know, we all want to accomplish awesomeness, right? We want to go do great things. And so in order to go do those great things, we have to identify what are we good at. And so if I want to come in and identify how to get from where I am to accomplishing a great goal in my life, how do I go accomplish my potential? I have to be able to identify what I'm good at and what my good qualities are. And it's being able to see myself in a positive light instead of in a sick light. And so what's happened with psychology is we've taken the idea that people are broken and we try to categorize them into what kind of broken are you? And this is horribly unfair because it looks at everybody through the idea that they should have a label about what kind of sick are you. And it's anybody that comes into my office. And if I'm supposed to look at everybody that comes into my office as sick, oh my gosh, that's horrible. And it's a very cynical look. Positive psychology is the exact opposite of that. It's people are free to go to counseling in order to go accomplish the things that they want to do. And so that's what I enjoy about how I've learned how to do therapy is I don't look at people through labels. What kind of broken do I need to classify them as so I get paid for treating them? If I give them the opportunity to submit their receipt to their insurance company is going to reimburse them a little bit at least, regardless of what I label them as. And so I label them with like an adjustment disorder, which allows me to treat them for up to 6 months, as long as that's an appropriate diagnosis, as long as there's not something that's going on that's a bigger deal. And so typically, for the majority of folks that I treat, it's parents who want to get their kids some help, or parents who want to do better at parenting, or it's people who are professionals who want to feel a little better about whatever's going on in their life. And so typically what I find is that people are in a season of life that sucks and they want to get a little bit of help to get from where they are to where they want to go. And so I'm able to help them do that. And so I'm able to help them identify what is going on in their life that's causing them, you know, a seasonal thing. And who are they? What do they enjoy doing? What do they want? What do they want to be when they become awesome? And what kind of awesome have they already accomplished in their life? Because one of the things we're going to look at is gratitude is one of the big components of positive psychology. And if you can find a way to fit your gratitude back into your view on your situation, your ability to accomplish goes up dramatically almost immediately. If you're able to find that thing that you're grateful for, success is like so quick. And so what I do is I sit down and I help people identify their strengths. And then we help them go practice using those strengths out in the world. And so I generally encourage them to go find some people to hang around and try their stuff out on. And so right now that's difficult because we're all kind of isolated. So we have to use what we got. And right now we have things like Zoom, and we have things like, I can educate myself if I can't go out and expose myself to other people. So we're going to kind of talk about how you can go out and look at the things that are important to you and invest in your improvement, or you can totally go try to play video games and cope. Not to say that either of those are right or wrong, because there are times when they're both right. So there's two guys we're going to look at. The first one is Dr. Seligman, and so he is the guy who we're going to point to the PERMA model in just a few minutes. He was the president of the American Psychological Association a couple years back. He's really kind of one of the driving forces in positive psychology, and if you do research outside of this class on positive psychology, Martin Seligman is going to be one of the big names that you're going to keep coming across. He has a whole website that revolves around positive psychology. And so he advocated for positive psychology being the alternative model to the clinical model a couple of years back. And so this whole idea that you should be able to look at self-improvement as an open model instead of sickness comes from him. He has brought it back. And so there's another guy with the craziest long name ever that has way too many consonants in it. And his name is Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. How those letters equal that name is beyond me, but there you go. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. And so this is the guy that came up with our concept of flow. And that's what we're going to get into here in just a second. The best moments in our lives are not the passive, receptive, relaxing times. The best moments usually occur if a person's body or mind is stretched to its limit in a voluntary effort to accomplish something difficult or worthwhile. There's a guy who said that. Could you guess who it is? What this is getting at is the idea of flow. And so the best moments are the moments where we're doing things that are hard. And that was Dr. Csikszentmihalyi who said that. So have you guys, I'm sure you guys have heard the term flow. Are you familiar with flow? Even though you see it on the slide, you're going to be familiar with it now. It's kind of one of those terms that we kind of use thinking that, it's a pretty easy term, musicians use this quite a bit, but it's a state in which people are so involved in an activity that nothing else seems to matter. The experience is so enjoyable that people will continue to do it, even at great cost, for the sheer sake of doing it. Yeah. Yeah, good, Brian. Yeah, anybody who plays video games is very familiar. So a couple of things to key in on is that you're so involved in the activity and it's enjoyable. And we keep doing it just for the sake of doing it, not to get a reward. It's a state of consciousness when people find genuine satisfaction. And there's some bullet points here that kind of break it down. That sense of timelessness or complete absorption in a task, strength, alertness, effortless control. These are some of the things involved in flow. There's clear goals every step of the way. Immediate feedback to your actions. There's a balance between challenges and skills. This is a really big one for me. Action and awareness are merged. Distractions are excluded from awareness. There is no worry of failure. Self-consciousness disappears. Sense of time becomes distorted, and the activity becomes its own reward. So think about this. Imagine with me, if you will, driving a car, right? Most of you guys probably have driven at some point. And then, so imagine you are listening to your radio, right? Stereo, song comes on. You ever have a time where you're so caught up in your song and you're singing along, you're enjoying the song, driving around, it's been like 5 minutes, and your song ends, and all of a sudden you're at a red light. And you look up and you're stopped at a red light, and you're like, how in the world did I get here? And you realize, wait, I've been through like 5 green lights safely, and I didn't have any problem getting to this red light and stopping. And when you're driving your car, you're going through some crazy situations where you could totally run off the road if you're not paying attention, but you have the ability to drive your car without thinking about the ditch on one side of the road or the double line on the other, and the fact that there's cars coming at you. And if you're doing 65 and the other cars are doing 65, and you were to like just turn your steering wheel a little bit too far to the left, you could have a 130-mile-an-hour accident between those two cars, right? But you don't worry about that. When the song comes on, you're able to totally zone out and enjoy your song and not pay attention to the stuff that it takes for you to successfully drive your car, right? And yet you can do that and end up at a red light and snap back into the present moment where you're fully conscious again. And the fact that you were doing all of that totally didn't matter, because you have mastered all of the parts of driving your car to where you can totally not worry about any of the stuff involved in driving your car anymore and totally zone out. And that's what flow is. And so you experience like a loss in time in those moments whenever you're driving your car and listening to your song. You can totally be absorbed in your song and go where your song takes you instead of to where the driving your car requires you to be. You guys ever experienced that kind of stuff? Yeah, Caleb says yes. Anybody else driven a car and listen to music? Ever wonder, like, how was I able to totally zone out for all that time? So that's the idea of flow. And so earlier on, we brought up the idea of dissociation. So dissociation involves the same mechanism of basically self-hypnosis. And so whereas flow is self-hypnosis in a positive way, dissociation and traumatic stress are involving self-hypnosis in a very opposite direction of flow. And so with flow, like your action and your awareness are merged. And in trauma, you experience dramatic stress, and that stress builds up walls. And so the walls that we build up in our stress keep us going in places that are safe behind those walls. But with flow, there are no walls. The walls come down and you go wherever the flow takes you. So I'm getting another warning about my internet connection. You guys still with me okay? Yeah, good. All right, so there's 3 conditions that you have to have before flow can work. You've got to have goals, you've got to have balance, and you've got to have feedback. And so when you've got a balance between like how good you are at something and how much you're able to do it well, that's when you can get into flow. So when I used to play the drums, I would be practicing something, and if I was practicing it, it would be hard for me to get into a flow state. But the better I got at it, and the more I was able to be good at what it was I was trying to do, then my feedback and my like goal ability to like match the skill that was required, those kind of evened out. And so that's how flow starts. Once you are good at it, it's able to get into flow. If you're not mastered on that skill, you can't really get into that flow state. And so a lot of you guys are going to identify to the video game part. And so when you're, very well practiced on the stuff to play a video game, it's easy to get into flow because you know how to do what it is you're trying to do. And so you experience a loss of time and a lot of the other stuff that goes into flow. Enjoyment being one of them. So a lot of you guys brought up the video game part. What else do you guys do for flow? Where else have you noticed getting into flow where you experience these 9 things?
I've experienced flow whenever I write music and record. It's sort of just like I just dive into it, I guess. Seems sort of simplistic since I've been doing it for like 6 years, but it's like you said, it takes time.
Yep.
You need to be like a master at your craft to actually develop the ability to dive into a flow state easily.
Yeah. Cool. Building carpentry, drawing a character, cooking. Lots of cooking. Cool. Gran Turismo. Yeah. Cool. All right. Let's go do a little video. I'm going to bring this up real quick. I think I'm going to be able to probably show it to you guys right here. Let's see if I can make this work. Let me know if you guys can hear this when it starts. Hey, can you guys see it? Oh, all right. Can't see it. How do I change that? See if this one does it. May not be able to do it. That's frustrating. Oh, all right. Alrighty. Want to make sure you guys can still see my screen. I keep getting a warning that my screen isn't showing. Good. All right. Cool. So wellness. What does this mean? What is this wellness bit? Wellness is like, what do you do to be okay? What do you do to invest in you? And like, you know, they put up a whole bunch of things on there. Thank you, Canada, on the video. And so, you know, gratitude is a big part of wellness. But like what we're going to get into with the isolation stuff, I want to kind of key that up here just by talking about wellness. There's not like a wrong thing here. So much of what goes into the work that you guys do in this class is like identifying your thoughts about what you like and like advocating for those things and developing why they're good. And so there's never like a wrong answer for that, as long as it's a healthy thing, you know? And so what do you do that is healthy to be okay? And so, you know, the wrong answer would be like, I drink way too much. That's not an investment in wellness. That is a coping skill that is bad. It's, hey, I like to go for walks. I like to get out and bike ride. I do photography. What are the things that you do that are healthy skills to cope with your life? And so there's not a wrong answer for what those things are. The idea that you should be doing these things is what wellness is about. What are you doing that is an engaging thing to go out into your life and invest in you for? And so you're going to see when you look back in this course, things like the weekly plan. That's how you're identifying and tracking what you're doing for wellness. So the fit category is a big part of that, right? As far as like what you would do to be physically healthy, maybe mentally healthy. But, you know, the play part, like that's just about wellness too. It's just as good of a goal area as fit. There's not a wrong answer to it. There are so many right answers whenever you're looking at self-improvement and you identifying and advocating for what you think is a good investment in you. That's what wellness is all about. Cool? So our last model for today, this comes from Martin Seligman, and this is the PERMA model. And so PERMA is an acronym, and we're gonna just go through the components of that acronym, okay? And so this is really actually a great model. I use this with teenagers in my counseling. So positive emotion, engagement, relationships, meaning, and accomplishment. These are the parts of the PERMA model. So you're gonna hear me say these things and you're gonna be like, well, that sounds pretty obvious. And you would be correct. You being healthy should be made up of obvious things. There is no like mystery to you making positive, healthy choices. Positive emotions are an essential part of our well-being. Happy people look back on the past with gladness, look into the future with hope, and they enjoy and cherish the present, right? And so positive emotion is a good thing. Thank you, Captain Obvious. Positive emotion is positive, and having positive emotions is good. But like, more importantly, there's a good reason to value experiencing things every day that are positive. So for me, like, I'm a news junkie. I have to be very intentional about unplugging from that stuff and going out and finding things that are positive to experience in my day, because right now we are surrounded by bad news. And so I have to be intentional about going and finding positive things. And so I'm trying to be more intentional about spending time with my family because they're home. And what a great opportunity for me to have to be home with my wife and my kids all the time. And so I can look at this as a, you know, oh my gosh, I have to stay home from work. Or I can look at it as a, oh my gosh, I get to stay home from work. And then when I get into that moment where I'm actually here with them, I experience positive emotion, and that is good. And so instead of trying to get away from the lack of control that I have over the situation, it's like I get to be here in this moment with my family. And so I've got to allow that positive emotion to have value. Next is engagement. When we focus on doing the stuff we truly care about, we can begin to engage completely with the present moment and enter the state of being known as flow. And so in order to be healthy, you have to be engaged in what's going on. I don't know if it is because I'm a guy or if it's because of, you know, I play too many video games right now, but I am an escape artist. I would love to be unplugging and completely getting away from the situation. And that's not healthy. I'm in a constant battle right now to stay engaged. And so staying engaged is very healthy. Whenever you are able to stay in the moment, you become more healthy. Flow exists right now. Flow does not exist off in the future. You can't be in flow in the future. You have to be in flow right now. And so the best way to experience flow is to be engaged with the current moment that's going on right now. The best way to be engaged is to be fully here while we are here. This is a big one. Relationships. Everyone needs someone. We enhance our well-being and share it with others by building strong relationships with the people around us, family, friends, coworkers, and neighbors. So we're in this really interesting time where we are not allowed to go out and be with other people. And so there's a barrier here. And so it's really great that we have things like Zoom to help us continue to have relationships. You know, we can't be in the classroom at the same time, but we have the ability through Zoom to all be here at the same time. And so relationships are one of our primary needs. We absolutely have to have other people in our lives in order to be healthy. And so it's not an accident that relationships are part of the PERMA model. In order to have wellness, we have to have relationships. And the reason why we long for being back together with people is because relationships are so important to us. What do you guys think? The last thing here is meaning, or actually it's not last, it's most important for me. We're at our best when we dedicate time to something greater than ourselves. This might be religious faith, community, work, family, politics, a charity, professional or creative goal. So feeling like the stuff that we are doing matters to other people is one of our primary motivations. And so we want to feel like the work that we do matters. And so here you guys are in school. You're here for a purpose. You are addressing the meaning part of your education by investing in Full Sail and investing in your schoolwork, doing all of the things that are involved in success for school. And so as you guys work on, you know, the discussion board and the call to play and reading your material, you're working on the meaning part of the PERMA model. And so every day you're doing a little bit towards wellness whenever you address the meaning part by doing your schoolwork. There you go, Caleb, firefighting, that's cool. Accomplishment. Everyone needs to win sometimes. To achieve well-being and happiness, we must be able to look back on our lives with a sense of accomplishment feeling like we did it and we did it well. You know, a lot of the discussion we get back and forth about why are we doing a class on play is about this right here. Accomplishment is really important. And so feeling like what we're doing is contributing to our lives moving forward, that's what accomplishment is about. And so some of the questions that we get about why am I doing a class on play, the assumption is that we're not valuing accomplishment, and that is untrue. We value accomplishment. And we value accomplishment because it's part of wellness. And so it's just, you know, the balance of things. Play is important, but we're not diminishing the fact that accomplishing things is important also. It is part of a healthy diet of being well. And so those are the parts of the PERMA model: positive emotion, engagement, relationship, meaning, and accomplishment. And so the idea here is each day we need to be doing a little bit of these things. And so the more we do all 5 of these things every day, that's how we do wellness. How we stay happy is by doing these 5 things. If you are able to do positive emotion every day, getting up and doing things in the here and now every day for engagement, interacting with other people in some way, doing things that matter to you and doing them well. This is what it means to be doing wellness. And so the PERMA model is how wellness works, or how happiness works, how you can build lifelong happiness is by living a life that's made up of these things. Make sense? All right. So those are the concepts, for the most part, that we have not yet gotten to for week 2. Flow, wellness, PERMA. Those are some of the concepts within positive psychology. Think about positive psychology being the positive route to building your life. Instead of looking for what's the problem, you're looking for what are the strengths. And so we're looking for the strengths. And by doing that, we're going to be focusing on our wellness. The way to focus on our wellness is to implement the PERMA model. And flow is how, when you are doing what you enjoy doing, you're going to go back and do it just because it's important to you and it's going to bring satisfaction to you. And typically what you're going to find is the activities that you enjoy doing bring flow. And your life is probably some sort of pattern on trying to get into a flow state because it's rewarding. So there's that stuff. Give me 1 second. I got to grab my water before we do a little pivot to our other stuff. I want to make sure you guys don't have any questions before I go into this. One of the questions might be, hey, are we going to do looking at the homework again? We can if you want, but you should ask. Okay. You guys with me? How are you guys feeling on this whole being at home thing? Like, is this okay with you guys being at home for like who knows how long? Does anybody feel like, Brian says he doesn't like it. Andy's an introvert. Ryan says he wants to be on campus. Yeah. I get a great amount of energy by being on campus. And so normally I teach online, But when I teach on campus, I get energized. And so I guess that makes me an extrovert, which is really surprising to me. um, but like, are you guys feeling, how are you feeling? Do you think life is going to ever get back to normal? Like, and what is normal going to look like, you know? Brian says, I like being alone, but my motivation for school comes from interaction. Yeah. So we're going to do a little bit of a talk on cabin fever, and like we're going to talk about isolation and feelings of loneliness. Caleb says he's very ready to get out. Me too. I want to go take photos. The place where I go do wildlife photography is even shut down. It's crazy. So dealing with cabin fever, mind over matter, keep looking for the positive things and stay in the present. Notice we just did our talk on flow and how staying in the present is a big deal. Like that's a big deal here too. So much of what goes into how we deal with the alternate reality that we landed in, our class is automatically designed to do or to address these things. And so I've been thinking about this for a couple weeks. We were kind of asked to talk about this kind of stuff. And I was like, what am I going to do and talk about these things? Because I get my motivation a little bit differently. And I think that, you know, I don't think my thing is going to be everybody else's thing. We all go through this in a different way. Even though we're all dealing with the same situation, everybody deals with it in a different way. And I don't want to tell you that my way is the right way. So I'm going to give you some things to think about as kind of ways to organize how you would go about it. And so this is what came to me first thing. A crisis happens when reality fails to meet your personal expectations. And so I got to tell you, my personal expectations have been horribly railroaded. My wife and I are working very hard to get our finances in order and our businesses, you know, successful. She's working really hard building her speech therapy practice. And so now all of the people that she has for clients, they don't know what their life is going to be like over the next 6 months. And so everybody's expectations have been changed, and by no choice of their own. Everybody has had their ability to predict what's coming, and that's been just kind of thrown out the window. And so we're supposed to just be okay with this for a little while, I guess. And so this is what a crisis is. When reality gives you something very different from what you expect, that is when a crisis arises. And that is where we are. We are in the middle of a crisis. And so I don't know about you, but this is what I've been dealing a whole lot with. It's called metacognition. And it's thinking about your thinking, being aware of the fact that your thoughts matter. And the more you think about what your thoughts are about, the more I become aware of what my biases are. And so I've been spending a whole lot of time with analyzing what I'm thinking about and realizing, you know, if I'm gonna find my happy place, I gotta spend more time thinking about my happy place, not thinking about the world falling apart. If I keep thinking about the world falling apart, my world is going to fall apart. And so I'm trying to do what I can within my ability to be able to think happy thoughts. How about you guys? What do you guys think? Are you thinking happy thoughts? Are you thinking scary thoughts? Both. It's a very real answer. So I'm going to give you some ideas here of very specific things that you can do. And so I'm going to start with these first, as like, these are just, I guess, obvious little coping skills that you could do. And you're going to find that what we're doing in this class is already keyed up for this. It's the whole idea of scheduling your time, plan things to do and to stick to it, right? Like that is literally what you're doing in our weekly plan. You're scheduling out your time, you're planning things to do, and you're hopefully sticking to it. Brian says he has pessimistic but realistic thoughts that are neither happy or bad. Yeah, that's probably a good and real place to be. Like there is a little bit of pessimism. Pessimism can be a good indicator of being based in reality, especially when there's bad events. But keeping it grounded in reality, that's the way to be. You can go outside, but don't go around people so much. Get vitamin D for sunlight. This is what I do. I've already been for a walk this morning. I'm going to go for a walk once I'm finished with this, and I'll go for a walk tonight. I do that because when I'm at Full Sail, I break up my time grading by getting out and clearing my head. And so I'm trying to keep that sense of normalcy at home by doing that. And using virtual means to see and talk to your friends and family, right? You can use things like Discord, FaceTime, Skype, Zoom, call people. I know my parents and my in-laws are so wanting to see my kids, and so we've been doing FaceTime with my in-laws, and we've been doing Zoom with my parents. And so you find little ways to be able to get that connection as a way to get over cabin fever. And so these are quick little coping skill type things that you can do. Other things are eat healthy, exercise, sleep, and smile. In my photography, one of the things that I have been a proponent of is trying to keep things simple. The more I advocate for doing simple things, the better off I am. And so whenever everything is all scrambled up, try to keep things as simply as you can. And that is a great way to keep the path moving forward. When hurricanes hit, this is what we focus on. Eating healthy, staying as active as we can when we're cooped up, keep sleeping, and stay happy. This is a big one for me. To limit your news and your updates. And so it's good to be informed, but it's also good to limit our exposure to these things because drama is what sells and fear is what sells. And so these things are pumped into our devices 24/7 now. And if we are constantly consuming news and updates, we are constantly going to be consuming what is meant to be limited. It's not healthy for people to be constantly bombarded 24/7 with updates because the updates are really micro updates. There's nothing huge change in those constant updates. And so just know that as you're consuming those news sources, they are designed to be dramatic. They're designed to get you to action, and it'll wear you out. So here are some things that we have as resources, just so that you're aware of them. You can do free stuff from Audible. They have a 30-day trial at Audible. The Overdrive app and the Hoopla app for downloading audiobooks and ebooks from the library. Full Sail is a great resource. If you get on to Full Sail 1, I believe, is where you go to the library for the links. Full Sail Library is a great resource for you guys while you're stuck at home. Things you can do with friends. You can do video games with friends. You can do esports. Jackbox games, I have not tried this yet. Board games can work through a simulator, through Tabletopia. You can do a Netflix watch party. There's a whole lot of workout stuff that's online right now, and that's cool. A lot of the museums are going online, and you can do virtual tours of museums. That's a really cool idea. some more of these exercise things that are available. People are just rolling these things out right now because it's great for them to get them. It's great for them to get you aware of what's out there. Peloton has a free 90-day trial. Orange Theory, free 30-minute daily workouts. This is what we do. We walk, bike, and run outside. Some other things, challenge your mind, 100-day challenge, spend 10 minutes working on creating something every day with no days off for 100 days. There's a 21-day challenge at mindless.one. It's a gratitude challenge. There's a 21-day gratitude challenge. That's a really good thing. My wife has been doing Duolingo. Duolingo is an app to learn a different language. You can take Yale's wellness and happiness course for free. And you guys have links for O'Reilly and LinkedIn. LinkedIn, I think, is what we're using now as our primary. Virtual cultural experiences. I went to this one, the concert one. There's a whole bunch of concerts from like all the way back from the 70s. You can go watch these whole online concerts. They're all just piled up there for you. Museums and national parks are online. There's a big one for NFL Game Pass and NBA League Pass. They're offering, like, you can go back and watch their whole library of things. There are no sports currently going on. So these are things that are archived from previously. So here's what I wanted to just kind of talk about for a second. One of the big factors, like I like to look for the meaning behind things because I'm a therapist nerd. And so the main theme that we're dealing with isolation is control. Our ability to have any feeling of control over the situation has been messed with. Our sense of control has been deeply impacted by our mitigation strategy for COVID-19. And so I noticed that as soon as things started happening where we were doing social distancing and then stay-at-home orders, I no longer had control over the goals in my life with respect to my wife's clients and like how I do my daily life. Like whenever somebody tells me basically you can't go take photos until we decide it's okay again, like that messes with my sense of control. And so that's what's going on here. And so I don't know about you, but if you feel, you know, a sense of foreboding or like a unresolved emotions, probably what's going on is a control thing. And I'll tell you, one of the things that I do not specialize in is eating disorders. And eating disorders are very much a control issue. And so a whole lot of what we do in life that revolves around food is a control issue. And so this is in the same realm where when you can't go to work, when you're stuck at home, one of the things we do is we eat because there's a sense of control in eating. And it's like one of those last things that I have left that I have control over is what I put into my body. And so that's why it kind of is, you're going to notice people are making fun of the fact that they're eating more. Well, it's because it's a control issue to eat. And so just know that when something like this happens, whenever life gives you something very different than what you expected, when a crisis happens, life hands you something totally different than what you expected, you've got two routes to go down. And so those two routes are, I can cope. And so here are some things that you can do in this time to cope. You can read and you can exercise, you can play video games, you can watch sports, you can do all of these things. And I'm here to tell you, it is totally fine to do these things. what these things are designed to do is to occupy you when you do not have control over the situation. And if you don't have any control over the situation, what we try to do is cope with that. And so these are healthy things that you can do to control that time, because you can't control whether or not you can go out and hang out with people. And so one path is coping. And we're all going to be traveling this path in one way or another by going out and trying to keep ourselves busy. And so the other path is, how do you do wellness? Okay. And so wellness is not just about coping. Wellness is, how do you invest in yourself? And what does that look like? And so for me, I'm doing things that bring value to my life. I am spending time with my wife and my kids. I am feeling very fortunate and blessed to be able to have time where I can just be with my kids. And the fact that it is a struggle tells me that I need to make that investment. And so I am doing that quality time with my kids because I would normally not do it. I would normally be coping. And so instead of coping and being busy, I'm trying to be less busy and be here. And so other things that I do are, I read about things that bring wellness to my life. So I'm reading a book called The Man in the Mirror, and it's about getting out of the rat race of what society thinks is important. And what society thinks is important is being occupied and keeping up with people who are making lots of money and doing all of these things that generally, in the end, leave us unsatisfied. And so I'm trying to do research on who am I and where am I going and what's satisfying to me. And so wellness stuff is about, what are the satisfying things in my life long term? And so my challenge here for you is the path that's different than, exercise and coping and video games is, what does future you look like in 5, 10, 20 years? Who are you going to be? And what are the qualities that you need to develop in order for those things to happen? And what things can you do for your wellness between now and like the next 5 minutes to address that? And so for me, it's reading about identity work for me, because I'm a therapist. A whole lot of what I do is, my job is to be with people and to know myself well enough to be able to not put me in their situation. And so I'm spending a whole lot of my time working on investing in wellness, and that's being fully present in this moment and developing my character for what is currently going on, instead of trying to escape to the future or to the past. And so I see those two different paths. One of them is about coping, and one of them is about investing in wellness. So I would like to encourage you to do those things also. I've got a link here for a great article. I'm going to put it in the chat box for you guys. And I've actually already shared it on the discussion board. And so you guys can go find this link in the discussion board. And it's a great article on isolation. Let's see. Can you guys see my screen now? Sharing is pause. Cool. All right. Okay. So that's about what I have. Hopefully you guys can see this article. You can go read it off of the chat board if you like. Do you guys have any questions? No questions.